For our next session of the day, we've got a thought leadership spotlight. It's about the global playbook for AI-powered work, how pacesetters win across borders. These are the people who are innovating the most. And we'll be asking, how do you drive unified performance and innovation when your teams are all over the globe? While many multinational companies struggle to scale new technologies, a select group of pacesetter organizations are leveraging AI and they're building cohesive, high-performing global workforce. These leaders aren't just adopting new tools, they're implementing a universal playbook for growth, and we're going to tell you about that. Drawing on findings from the Josh Bersin Company's Pacesetters and the Superworker Era report, our speakers will talk about how Pacesetter organizations are cultivating talent density and creating superworker teams by using AI-powered talent intelligence to identify and develop critical skills that don't matter about what the location is of the employee. It's also about moving beyond fragmented regional HR functions to a globally integrated AI-powered model that supports a dynamic and agile workforce. Leading this session will be Rebecca Warren. Welcome back, Rebecca, Director of Talent-Centered Transformation at Eightfold AI, and Kathy Enderis, who's a SVP, Global Industry Analyst at the Josh Bersin Company. So Rebecca and Kathy, welcome. Glad to have you here. And as soon as you're ready, there we are. Hi, Kathy.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Very good.
And Rebecca is coming too.
Joining us right now.
Perfect. Right on time.
I'm here. It just took a
Yay.
second.
There you are. All right, great to have you on. And this is you've got great research behind this. So please clue our audience in and take it away.
All right. Kathy, great to see you again. So excited to be able to do this session with you. We have a lot to cover in 30 minutes. So what do you think about just jumping right in?
Let's jump right in. I love it.
Okay, cool. So Steve did a great job talking through the abstract. What are the big things that we want to hit and talk about? So let's dig in first to the research that y'all have done at the Josh Bersin Company, looking at the part of the Global Workforce Intelligence Project. So from what I understand, that's about analyzing companies across various industries worldwide. So can you share about why taking a global perspective was so crucial when you were trying to understand how top performing pacesetter companies operate today?
Yeah, of course. And of course, yeah, happy to. And as I was listening to Steve's abstract, reading through the abstract, I'm like, wow, we have lots of big words in there. So we'll unpack all of them, right? Because we talk about super workers, we talk about pacesetters, we talk about AI transformation, we talk about talent intelligence and global workforce intelligence. And so we'll make all of this simpler and less jargony. So let's start with the global workforce intelligence project and what that is. So that's actually a huge initiative that we at the Josh Bersin Company, and we are a research and advisory company for the HR profession, have been working on actually together in collaboration with Eightfold for the last 4 years almost. I want to say 4 years ago, we started looking at that. And the big idea behind this was, let's look at industry by industry. What skills globally does this industry have? What skills are rising? What skills are declining? What roles are emerging? What roles are declining? And what organizational solutions are actually prevalent in this industry to solve the biggest business problems. So first we started, what's the problem that this industry has to solve? And then we looked at skills and roles and organizational solutions and career pathways and all of that. And what we used as an underlying basis of that was the talent intelligence platform or insights from Eightfold, which is, I think, I don't even know how many billions of people profiles that you have in there, but a lot. So
1.5 billion.
1.5 billion. See, okay, you have it on top of your head. So 1.5 billion, which is a lot. So we said, let's look at all of these skills industry by industry. And we started with healthcare, and then we went to consumer packaged goods, and then we went to pharmaceutical and financial services and insurance and automotive. So we dove deeper into lots of different industries, and each of these industries has very different problems. Like healthcare, for example, have this huge nursing shortage and clinical shortage, as everybody knows. Financial services companies need to be a little bit more like fintech companies, so they need to have next generation tech skills and capabilities. Each of the industries basically has a different problem, but what they all have in common, and why we study this globally, is they all have kind of at the core, at the top of all of this, they have the best companies in each of these industries globally have what we call skills velocity as this guiding principle. And what does skills velocity mean? Well, it means actually always staying on top of changing skills requirements, and then recruiting, retaining, developing these critical skills with speed and at scale, because many of these global companies are large companies that have to deal with lots of complexity. And then always thinking about how do we redesign the work with AI to kind of leverage these new skills at scale as well. So that's kind of what we found out. And the reason why we wanted to look global is because the talent pool has become increasingly global, right? A lot of times you actually can't find talent in your country, in your location. And so you have to think about a global perspective as well. I'm just thinking, for example, about AI developer skills, and I just looked at the report there. And of course, the like deep AI builder skills, lots of them are in the Bay Area, but then there's places in India, there's New York, for example. So there's different places around the globe where you find those specific skills that you're looking for. So taking this global approach to solving talent problems with a skills first approach was kind of the underlying theme of all of these studies.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to make sure that we're not missing out on industries or skills or roles or trends. All of that information has to come together in order to have a robust set of findings, right? You have to broadly. But I think so. Talk to me a little bit about, you just mentioned all of these different places, right? And I know the previous speakers were talking about they've worked in multiple different locations, different cultures, different regulations, different markets, different industries. So, okay, let me just ask this. Can a single unified strategy really work for a global organization, or are we just kidding ourselves?
I think it's critically important actually to have a global strategy and to
Okay.
have local implementation. So I always say design and strategy globally and execution and implementation locally. And that's
Right.
really, really important, because if we want to create a globally unified, globally excellent employee experience, culture, get to our mission, to our vision, what we need to accomplish as an organization globally, if you're in a global organization, and I expect many of you are when you're listening to this kind of conference on globalization and going global. This kind of balancing the global perspective, the global mindset, the global kind of approach with, of course, how you execute needs to be local. I really like the local nomenclature.
Global.
I think I got it from, I don't know who I got it from. I think Nestle or somebody calls it global. And so
Yeah.
I think that's what we want to have. Absolutely. You have to have this global strategy, global mindset, global approach to tie everything together. And then, of course, people move in different speeds and at different scale. And within, of course, their country requirements and their country culture. For example, I was doing a keynote yesterday for one of our clients, and the HR people, these were the 40 most senior HR people in this global client, and half of them were actually from Australia, and some of them were from the US, some of them were from the UK, so very, very broad scale. And we were talking about AI, and of course, somebody in Europe, in the UK, raises her hand and she says, well, how do we deal with all these AI regulations that we have in Europe that we maybe can't move as fast as maybe the US can move? And what we came to the agreement or the conclusion to is, yes, of course, you need to be aligned with the laws and with the regulations and all of that of your country. That's a given. Like, that's the lowest bar that you have to kind of cross. You can't be breaking them. But with the mindset of all marching into the same direction, all
Right.
using AI, for example, for what purpose, for what end, how we want to use it, like all of that. And then how you execute it has to be local.
I think that's exactly right, right? We have to have that global umbrella, and then we have to have the local execution. So
That's
wonderful.
right.
Thank you for explaining that. So, okay, let's talk about talent density. I know you talk about it in your report, and it's in the abstract of what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about it. So talent density. How are leaders at the top of multinational companies using AI and talent intelligence to build what you're calling super worker teams consistently across different countries, cultures, markets, all of that same thing? Talk to us about talent density.
Yeah, so talent density is really a big theme that was first introduced by Netflix. So if you think about Netflix, they have these, like they have a number of very specific HR and talent practices, but one of them is, for example, to do what they call the keeper test. So they look at every person, not just once a year, but several times a year. And basically the manager and the team basically thinks about, if this person was going to run out the door, would I try to stop? Right? That's the kind of the keeper test. And if I would, why is that so? And if I wouldn't, why is that so? And this is something that has to do with their skills, that it has to do with their attitude, their behaviors. And so they're looking at basically constantly building these teams of high performers. Basically, they see their company not as a family, which I think is good, because companies are not families, right? Like they're
Interesting
not your
distinction.
they're not your parents and not your brothers or sisters, right? Or they're not your spouse. And because you can easily divorce yourself from them much more easily, or they can easily divorce you very easily. So anyway, so they don't see companies as families, they see companies as sports teams, like high performing Olympic teams. And so they say it's basically that approach of these super worker teams. We also call it super worker, that talent density, to say every person needs to be so high performing and so highly skilled and so much adding to the performance of the entire team, not just for themselves. So they have to be a team player. If you have, I don't know, a basketball team, right? Every person being their own kind of high performer is not enough, because they need to really add to the density and the success of the entire team. And that's how they think about it. So that changes everything, how you think about hiring, how you think about performance management, how you think about rewards and recognition and career models. Many companies do kind of have that same approach. Amazon, for example, I know they're not having actually the hiring manager interview people, the people on their team, but they have other teams interviewing them. And once you kind of pass the test, you get hired, and you don't belong to the hiring manager, you belong to the company, right? So that kind of talent density also means that sometimes small teams and smaller organizations are more successful than large organizations. And that certainly was true with Netflix, right? Because they're a relatively small organization, but look at their revenue per person. It's like a multiple of other tech companies or entertainment companies, whatever you kind of measure yourself against. So that talent density has to do with skills, of course, too. You asked why it has to do with skills. Well, it has to do with, you're thinking about an Olympic team or a basketball team, for example. Well, what skills does this person have? Are they, forgive me, I'm not actually a baskall fan, so I probably don't know exactly what the skills are, but I know some of them are blocking, some of them are shooting, right? Some of them are like have different roles, different skills, exactly. Some of them are dribbling. So whatever they do, and of course I'm not like a basketball fan, so my husband would probably be very upset with me by describing the roles in basketball, because he's a fan. But you get it, right? So understanding the skills and how they are complementary to the skills of everybody else in the organization. And so for that, you need talent intelligence. You need to see what are the skills that this person brings, what are the skills of everybody else in the organization, and how do they fit together, and how they add to it. The skills, the work behaviors, the cultural, the mindsets, the orientation, all of that has to fit seamlessly together as a team, so you can hit that high performance.
Yeah, I love you when you say that about you just can't hire high performers. And many companies have done that, right? You've got amazing
That's right.
people and they're running this way and somebody else is running that way and they're
That's
both
right.
really smart and they're really great at what they do. But if they're not, as you said, complementary, if they don't work together, that's a challenge of trying to get the team, right? So
That's
and then
right.
when you build the team, it's again what you talked about, that global architecture to say, what outcomes are we working towards? It can't just be, we're going to accomplish this little project. We're going to, knock off this little goal. It has to be tied to what the organization is trying to accomplish. That's why they're pace setters, right?
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And so it starts basically with this skill-based approach that you say, well, just the job that they're in is not enough to describe where this person can actually play, where they can add the most value, because they might be have adjacent skills that you never thought about, right? So they
Mhm.
could be bringing, I don't know. I have, for example, a PhD in mathematics. Am I using it right now? No, but could I use it? Yeah, probably, right? So that's every single one of us has done different things. We have a
Right.
person on our team, for example, on the research team, who used to be a marketing manager. Well, she could work in marketing as well. So knowing more about what skills people have beyond the job that they're in is really going to increase your talent density, because then you're not saying that the skills are locked up in the job that they're doing today, but they can work
Right.
on, as our team member does, for example. She's working on marketing projects now in addition to doing research. And that happens with every profession and with every person, because we're all multifaceted people that don't just have one career. Every single one of us have these like meandering career paths a lot of times, right? And so
Mhm.
that's why kind of talent intelligence is so important, to really understand what are these adjacent skills and how can you move people around to create that high performance.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a two-part question. So the first part of this question is about HR. So we've got a lot of global companies who have very siloed HR functions, which makes it really difficult to have that integrated focus on people. So you're talking about a globally integrated AI-powered model. So what's the biggest challenge in making that transition for HR? And then what's the payoff?
Yeah, I mean the challenges, of course, are, I would say, historical, how we've grown up in HR. So we have all grown up in HR, especially in large organizations. We built the organizational silos, but a lot of time also the country silos, where we're saying, here's the head of HR for this country, and they are duplicating kind of the entire HR organization. So you have Germany and the Netherlands and the UK and the US and Canada and Australia, like every single country basically having a CHRO, who is basically just bringing together for their country the entire HR function. And that, of course, creates a lot of duplication. It creates inconsistency with like of the employee experience, and it creates higher costs as well. So most organizations see it from a technology perspective, and then they integrate all the HCM systems, right? So they say, oh, we do a big HR transformation, what we used to call it, and I've been working on them in my earlier part of my career in consulting for many, many years, where they say basically you bring in Workday, you bring in Oracle, you bring in SAP, whatever, right? A new HCM system, and that unifies some of the data pieces and some of the operations, but it really doesn't unify the higher order, more
Right.
consulting oriented, more like talent strategy oriented places. So that's always a challenge. And the challenge is also, as we see, for example, from companies like Lego Group, a lot of times when they try to do a more global HR operating model, and we call that systemic HR, when they're moving towards that, they got a lot of pushback from both the HR leaders who didn't want to give up their
Mhm.
control, of course, that gets in the way, as well from the business sometimes. So their business leaders said, hey, wait a minute, I'm the president of, I don't know, Sweden, right, of Lego in Sweden, and I used to have entire control over my entire HR organization. And now I have to do some of these things that are balanced with all the other countries. And what about my needs? So you get a lot of these kind of power struggles as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest issue there. And in some cases, you just have to rip the band-aid. So when we worked, for example, with the Lego group, they said, we just did it anyway. And we found the supporters, we found the business people that were actually for it. We found some successes on why doing it on a global basis created better outcomes. And so that's the why behind it. Where you asked us, well, why would you want to do it? The why behind it is because solving business problems is why HR is here for, right? And every business problem is a people problem at their heart. So if you're having, for example, as Lego did, they needed to upgrade their whole organizational operating model towards a more kind of digital way of working, right? More digital solutions and all of that. Well, if you're not hitting that, the business might be impacted significantly, right? And so without doing this on a global basis, because who owns digital transformation? Every country doesn't own the digital transformation. It has to be a global initiative. And so that's the upside, helping HR really solve the right business problems.
Okay. So the second part to that question, and then I think we're out of time. Dang it. So the second part,
It always goes so quickly.
We always run out of time. So if we think about, first of all, figuring out to get HR in the right spot, now let's talk about the final question about rewiring the organization with AI. So if you think about how top companies are using AI to reframe, reorganize, rewire their organizations to be able then to put these strategies into place. What's the biggest, well, let's talk about a competitive advantage. What's the competitive advantage about rewiring your organization top down with AI?
So the biggest advantage, of course, is you can actually solve the business problems, right? Because when you have AI around it, you get better insights, more connected insights, insights that connect actually the business strategy with your HR strategy and your people strategy. So that's the big advantage. We always think about falling in love with the problem. So that's the huge advantage there. What gets in the way, of course, is organizational practices, politics, sometimes mindset, all of the kind of legacy that we have set up. But companies like ING, for example, we described them in the Pacesetters study, they have operated in a much more agile function already in their entire organization. So much easier to also operate in the HR function in a global and agile way.
So just to wrap that up, so it sounds like the number one thing that moving to a global organization, moving to that playbook, is that agility and that ability to solve bigger problems, bigger brains, bigger super workers, bigger teams to be able to solve bigger problems.
That's right. And AI requires you to do this too, by the way. AI is an accelerator to bring together globally and across functions, not just HR functions, but business functions, the entire organization. So they, in a way, AI makes the world even smaller and more manageable, because now it's easier than ever to get insights from the entire organization and the entire world to help you accomplish organizational growth and productivity.
To pull it all together. All right, Steve, you're just going to have to yank us off the stage because we could
I
talk
know.
for hours. So
we talk forever.
We'll stop. So
thank you,
back
Kathy.
to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. You really showed our audience how they can get ahead of the